right, welcome to the second session on industrial cybersecurity, navigating the cybersecurity landscape of ICS and OT networks. The moderator for this session is Hamish Mackenzie. Welcome, Hamish.
Thank you very much, Lucian. So yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm hoping one of those fits to everybody in the audience, unless you're up in the middle of the night watching this. My name's Hamish Mackenzie. I'm welcome to this session on navigating the cybersecurity landscape of ICS and OT networks, insights and solutions, sponsored by OPSWAT. Before we get into it, I just got a little bit of housekeeping. Apologies to anybody who's already heard this 3 times from me today, but we'll go through it anyway. The session is going to last just shy of an hour. We're going to introduce the topic, the panelists. We'll be getting lots of insight from them, but we are going to leave some time for questions at the end from you, the most important people in the room, the audience, of course. Quick request from me, please put your questions in the Q&A tool, not in the chat. It just makes it easier for me to find them, and a more chance that you'll get your questions answered as well, if they're easy to find. We'll also be running a few polls during the event, so keep your eyes out for those, and please do participate. It will be great to get your feedback on some of the issues that we're going to be discussing. One quick heads up for some other IoT World events that are coming up in the next few months. So we've got Manufacturing Day on May 22nd, Smart Buildings Day on July 24th, and Sustainability and AI Day on September the 10th. So get those dates in your calendar, go to the IoT website, world website, to get all the details on that. Register if registration is already available. And with that said, let's get started focusing on this session today. So with this session is going to focus on the critical need to secure data coming in and out of OT environments in order to safeguard those environments against cyber threats. So we're going to be looking at managing threats in terms of data sources, destinations, integration solutions. We're going to be looking at the importance of achieving compliance with industry standards, of course, and regulations. Look at various scenarios, case studies that will help us understand how you can actually implement a security strategy successfully. And also discussing some emerging trends such as threat intelligence and anomaly detection. And I'm delighted to say we've got 4 experts with us. The first of which is Francesco Radicati, Senior Analyst at Guidehouse Insights. He is having a couple of technical issues, but we're hoping to get him at the very least on voice, if not on video. Francesco is a Senior Research Analyst who contributes to Guidehouse Insights IoT and Connectivity Research Service. His focus is on Internet of Things and renewable energy, with an interest in global market analysis and forecasts for industrial IoT deployments and the interaction of multiple connectivity protocols within industrial and consumer IoT. He also writes about the use of IoT in transportation, manufacturing, and smart home environments as well. Then we have Marc Toussaint, who's Senior Product Manager at Cybersecurity at OPSWAT. He's a very experienced professional in product management and technical solutions with dynamic results in across the high-tech industry. He's got a very powerful arsenal of skills, senior level sales, product management, marketing expertise, combining that with engineering knowledge, and that really is a rare combination. He uses the skills to transform technical concepts into project strategies that deliver real customer value, and he's demonstrated success in all aspects of marketing management, led strategic initiatives in product lifecycle management, product marketing, analyst and media relations, channel and business development. So he's done an awful lot. He's very experienced, and we're very pleased to have him here today. Then we have Matt Wiseman, Senior Product Manager at OPSWAT. He's based in Canada, and Matt manages OPSWAT's OT product line with a focus on product engineering, product marketing, and cybersecurity strategy. He's got experience working in large industrial organizations and has worked to provide comprehensive cybersecurity solutions for all the main critical infrastructure industries. Before OPSWAT, he served in various cybersecurity strategy and global marketing leadership roles at Honeywell. He has an MBA, he has a BA in business management with an honors specialization in finance, as well as a whole host of cybersecurity certifications as well. So another guy who's done a lot and got all the qualifications and the experience to prove it. Very happy to have Matt with us. And last but definitely not least, we have Jeremy Morgan, who's BU Cybersecurity Manager at Hitachi Energy. Jeremy's developed a real passion for industrial and automation control systems over the years, a 20-year career, in fact. And in his current role as the Global Cybersecurity Manager for the Grid Integration Unit, he spends most of his time on critical risk management decisions to balance cybersecurity and digitalization efforts for both the internal business and external products, and he enjoys the challenges that brings, and I'm sure there are lots of them. Working in a field, he says, that still has systems older than his career, so it's never dull. But there's almost always a right solution to be found in the end. So, like us all, we sometimes have to work a bit harder than we would like, but we always get there in the end. So it's great to have Jeremy with us as well. Finally, very short introduction to myself. I'm a former IDC analyst, but I've been running a consulting practice here in Munich, Germany since 2006. I work with CEOs, founders, other senior executives and across technology businesses in Europe, the US, helping them with their growth efficiency, which includes also integrating Gen AI into a lot of their workflows. I also help leaders within those organizations become more effective and help them focus more on strategy and evangelizing what they're doing rather than the nitty-gritty of day-to-day operations. If you'd like to know more about what I do, please do look me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Hamish Mackenzie on LinkedIn in Munich, Germany, so it shouldn't be too hard to find me. Very quick reminder, all your questions, please put them in the Q&A tool so we can find them easily. And try and keep them short, and if possible, also let me know which panelist you're addressing that question to. That will also help speed things up and just make sure we get through as many questions as possible. All right, so with all that said, let's get into it. And I want to come to Mark first. And I wanted to see if you could set some context, Mark, by talking a little bit about what are the most common use cases for securing industrial Internet of Things environments.
Thank you, Hamish. In Upswat, we're seeing a large uptick in the number of IIoT deployments, and it really spans the gamut of different vertical industries. And we see uptake in the food and beverage industry, in chemical, oil and gas, or power transmission and distribution. It really runs the gamut. But and many of these projects now are greenfield projects. Some are not. But the overarching use case that we see over and over again is the need for remote monitoring and moving data to the cloud. You may have a solar project out in the middle of the desert and 150 miles from anything else, and the notion of sending people out to that site to do periodic health checks is just not cost sustainable. So our customers are looking for us to help automate that off monitoring to get that data into the cloud so it can be monitored remotely. And there are any number of ways that customers are achieving that now, leveraging some of the newer protocols to take advantage of low band networks, lack of reliable networks in these remote locations. There are several other use cases for historian replication from IIoT assets. But again, the vast majority of what we're seeing out there today is remote monitoring security use cases.
Okay, all right. So yeah, so you're talking already about those remote assets. I just want to now come to Francesco, see if he can hear us, see if we can hear him. Francesco, are you there?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
Oh, fantastic. Yes, you're coming
Excellent.
through loud and clear. You're coming through loud and clear. Great stuff. Excellent.
Hallelujah.
All right. So, yeah, I wanted to ask you on just in that context, what are some of the key barriers to implementing cybersecurity for OT and ICS networks from your perspective?
Well, I just completed some research on this, specifically in the energy sector, and some themes that came up repeatedly in interviews and briefings were how OT cybersecurity generally lags behind IT, in part because it has traditionally been seen as an IT problem rather than an OT problem. People didn't really see the need, but now that things are being connected more, they are beginning to see the need again. But now you run into the problem of the cost of replacing legacy systems. A lot of these devices or even sort of connectivity protocols aren't really fit for purpose for the needs of ICS systems now. And then just simply there's also a lack of cybersecurity personnel in the industry, especially in utilities, that they tend to be going more toward the Googles and Microsofts of the world, and and in general overall whether across OT and IT, there's a shortage of cybersecurity personnel.
Right. Okay. So yeah, it's interesting that you bring the people aspect. There's always some kind of human element to this. Although discussions focus mostly on the technology, of course, there's always a human aspect, and particularly in terms of that skills gap, talent gap. I think this is a good opportunity now to ask the audience. Paul, if you can hear me, could you bring up the first poll question, please? Because find out from them what they're saying are the key barriers to implementing cybersecurity in those environments. So legacy systems, resource constraints, lack of cybersecurity training, which again speaks to that people aspect, operational impact, or lack of budget. So if all our people in the audience there could take a minute to fill that out, we'll just give you a few seconds to do that. And then we'll see what the results are, and then get your reaction to that and see if there are any surprises that come up from that. So I guess the results are going to come up in a second. Here we go. So 39% legacy systems, 11% resource constraints, 21% cybersecurity training, 7% operational impact, and 21% lack of budget, the old money problem. What are any of those results surprising to you guys, or is that pretty much what you would have expected to see?
It's about what I would have thought.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, resources and costs and all those things which are stopping people in making these investments or taking the decisions sometimes. In order to just round off this section, I wanted to come back to you, Francesco, and ask, like, what is it really at stake for OT and ICS asset owners? Why is this topic so important, and why are you spending so much time, researching it?
Well, once again, looking at it from the electric utilities point of view, there's the financial and reputational damage that's at stake. But also, you're talking about the lives of employees in affected facilities, consumers who depend on the electrical grid for life-saving devices, for CPAP machines or in-home medical equipment, or even simply to stay warm during extreme weather events. So we have seen instances of malicious actors targeting utilities, infrastructure, power infrastructure, and I mean there are real world life or death consequences to it.
Okay, well, yeah, it doesn't get much more important than that. In terms of disruption to energy supply, obviously has massive consequences, and potentially loss of life. In terms of electric utilities, oil and gas companies in particular, are they kind of more under threat than others? Are they being more targeted more often than other types of utilities or other types of organization?
So I would say that based on talking to cybersecurity firms like Dragos and Nozomi Networks and the like, and reports that they put out, they regularly rank energy and electricity in the top 4 or 5 industries at risk. Although, to give some context, they count something like 20 or 30 incidents per year for the past 2 years for those sectors. Compared with manufacturing, which sees several hundred. Electricity and oil and gas are definitely key sectors that get targeted. But and yeah, I should say oil and gas includes another 20 or so incidents per year, on top of what the electricity sector gets. But yeah, I would say that manufacturing is much more targeted in general.
Okay, but so they're being targeted more often, but are they, like, is the scale of the attacks similar, or are the ones, the fewer attacks on the utilities, are they tend to be bigger or more sophisticated, or is that not an important difference?
I think these numbers really just take in attacks, all told. It's hard to say, but coming back to what I was saying about the stakes, if you are taking out an entire city's electrical network, then there are wider reaching consequences, I think, than sort of knocking over a factory, which isn't to minimize the ability of malicious actors to perform a supply chain attack and knock down a manufacturing company's worldwide operations.
Yeah, no, of course, and I mean any attack is serious and can have serious consequences depending on the exact situation. And we're going to come on later to talk about some specific examples and lessons learned, and how that can help shape the cybersecurity approaches in the future. Paul, can we bring up the second poll question now, please? We were talking about consequences there. And we want to ask something about that now as well. So what widespread consequences are you most concerned about should there be disruption to energy supply? Is it downtime and loss of revenue, reduced reliability of essential services, environmental impact, or the whole negative publicity and reputational impact? So it'd be great to get your input, audience members, on that topic as well. We'll just give it a few seconds for the results to come in. Here we go. Right, so very much focused on downtime, loss of revenue, and reduced service reliability, whereas environmental impact and reputational is not so much of a concern. Again, guys, is this what you would have expected to see?
Yeah, I mean, definitely as I've been saying, sort of knocking out essential services is I think the worst case scenario. Definitely, reputational impact flows from that, but what the utility needs to do is make sure that it's keeping the lights on.
Right. Okay, so it's clear that there's a lot of threats out there. What are the kind of measures that we can be taking, or that the utilities can be taking, to prevent these kind of cyber incidents that could lead to supply disruptions? I know Matt and Jeremy, I think you've got some thoughts on that. So let's start with Matt.
Sure. So thank you very much, Hamish. So when we look at utilities, and quite often most of critical infrastructure, they operate with some type of an air gap network. So for those of you that may not be familiar, that would mean that they're disconnected from the broader internet, right? There's only a few avenues to actually bring in files, updates, or patches. So that in itself can be perceived as a bit of a security measure. Going beyond that, we need to make sure that everything that breaches that air gap, right, whether it's a USB drive, a vendor's laptop, an SD card, even a floppy disk, anything that's entering that segmented network that's separate from the broader internet, we need to make sure that it's been scanned and that it's safe and free from malware to prevent any of that unplanned downtime or impact to any essential services. Okay,
speaking as someone who's not involved with utilities, how prevalent are floppy disks still in those environments? Is it?
Believe it or not, if across broader critical infrastructure, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? If it's still running, if we're still manufacturing, we're still producing, we're still making money and running our business, why would I tear things out? You would be shocked how often I have someone come up to me and say, hey, can you scan this? And they hand me a floppy disk, and I'd be like, yeah, we got you covered. Don't worry about it. But
wow.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing.
Yeah, there are still control systems running DOS, so.
Yeah. I mean, I'm familiar with it in the banking sector, and I know that there's a lot of over 60-year-olds who maybe been in retirement for 5 years, and the banks are getting them back in because they're the only ones who know how the old stuff still works, right? So I'm not sure if the same thing is happening in the utilities, but
yeah, very much so.
Okay, interesting. All right, Jeremy, do you have any other examples of measures that can be taken to prevent these attacks?
First, I thought the question was phrased interesting, right? So if you take just the first half and cut off the second half, right? Preventing cyber incidents. I think we focus too much on that part, right? And then it's really what we need to focus on is preventing the supply disruptions when we're talking about ICS or IIoT. And so that's the real business goal. Like I've seen plenty of password harvesting Trojans inside a control system. It's perfectly fine if you're not doing your banking on an HMI, which I don't recommend, right? So really what you need to do is make sure you understand all your business processes, right? And really understand what your core key business processes are. If we look at some of the other attacks we've seen, it's not so much the IoT environment or the IIoT environment, it's the billing and the metering associated with those processes that are taking down and offlining these processes, right? So you need to make sure you really understand your full scope. As Matt said, if you have removable media and transient assets like laptops and calibration machines coming in to calibrate sensitive equipment, right? Like, do you have a program on how to handle those? Because again, a lot of our equipment is quote unquote air gapped, right? And some of the biggest ways to get in is through removable media and transient assets. Do you have proper segmentation, right? Like, do you really know like all the ins and outs of your systems? Been to plenty of sites where people have swore to me that they didn't have any extra connections. We open up a box and all of a sudden there's a cable modem no one knew about, right? And so make sure you know that. You should be looking at micro segmentation these days. If you're doing a segmentation project, right, getting your northbound traffic prevented is great. But you also need to be looking at, are you also preventing the east-west movement? And so looking at like software-defined networking technologies to really do that micro segmentation is a big thing. And then one of the most critical controls of all that's most often overlooked is the simple backup. I walk into sites all over the world all the time, and the first question I ask is, where are your backups and when was the last time you've tested them? I get a lot of hemming and hawing, maybe some people furiously searching for a little while. They might find the CDs that were, burned 12 years ago, right, when the system was commissioned, if they're lucky, and no one's ever tried to read those. Right, and if you don't know, CDs degrade over time. Right, the fidelity of the data on that disk goes down over time. So, really making sure that you have good RTO and RPO, and you have good best tested backup methodologies is absolutely fundamental.
Okay. Mark, you were talking earlier about remote assets. I was just wondering whether there's any particular challenges associated there or particular methods, measures that are taken in terms of the remote assets.
Yeah, there are. And a lot of the challenges are associated with the nature of remote assets. You may have, wireless modems sending data off of remote asset, network reliability issues. Often there are space constraints. So things like there's no server room, so we need to look at putting ruggedized type DIN rail appliances in to enable the secure offload of that data. And also, with an IIoT environment versus an OT environment in a power turbine, there may be more cost constraints in those remote assets. So customers are a little bit more cost critical. So what that means in terms of reliability is that some of the choices that customers make will determine how reliable and cost effective those security systems are. So for instance, choosing the protocol that you use to offload data from an IoT asset, especially in an area where you're remote and maybe you have reliability issues, with your network. A protocol like MQTT may be more reliable, more lightweight than OPC, which is a real-time system that you potentially could have data loss, if you've got outages. So, there are any number of constraints, and a lot of them are not so much inherent in the security technologies that are available today, but in some of the attributes of those IIoT remote assets that require, companies like OPSWAT to look at what that deployment looks like in a different way and sort of tune that to accommodate for some of the challenges or nuances in securing these remote assets.
All right. So yeah, thanks for that insight, Mark. So I want to move on now to regulation. Regulatory framework standards are obviously very important across this space, energy sector compliance with various requirements that there are. Matt, what are the important regulatory requirements that we're looking at here?
Sure. I mean, it varies greatly based on, geography, your specific region, country. But it's the impact that these compliance and regulatory bodies can have. I believe it was 2019. There was a $10 million fine passed on from NERC CIP because of a lack of compliance. It was 127 violations and a $10 million fine. And I can guarantee you, whatever cybersecurity solution you put in place would probably cost less than what that fine was. So it's challenging with trying to plan ahead and stay on top of things. NERC CIP 003-7 is definitely a hot topic around securing any bulk electric system from USBs or inbound laptops. NEI 0809, more specifically on the nuclear side. There's a lot of conversation around these areas, but the best thing you can do is ask questions, try and be as informed as you can, and ensure that you have the tools you need to avoid these hefty charges.
And how quickly are these regulations evolving?
I mean, it depends greatly by industry, right? As we know, there's still floppy disks in use. So we've seen that often in critical infrastructure, it can be a slow change. But when needed, right, they can move quite quickly as well to respond to significant incidents. So it tends to vary, but it's something we need to stay on our toes and ensure that our security program evolves with these frameworks.
Okay. And so, Jeremy, when we're looking at, from an organizational perspective, how or what are some of the ways that organizations can make sure they do stay compliant while also maintaining a strong security posture overall?
It really starts with picking like a solid framework, right? Whether it's NIST or 62443, pick one, right? And really build your organization around that, and then really focus on hammering that in. Pick one that's built in a collaborative manner, right? You can always do the mappings to individual regulations. Like this is essentially how we run our business, right? We pick very large world accepted standards and we build against those. And then each and every customer and specific country or region we're in, we then have to do additional mappings to make sure that we're covered in that specific region as we work with our customers. But it all comes from that base of one of those very large globally accepted frameworks. In our case, it's specifically 62443. That is becoming the dominant kind of standard around the world for at least being accepted by end users and OEMs. The regulators all kind of want to, do their own thing, and that's getting more and more fractured all the time. But it's most of it builds off of 62443 or something very similar. Okay.
Anybody else got any comments about the regulatory side of things before we move on to some juicy examples of breaches and what we've learned?
I guess I'd just highlight some of the laws that have come in other jurisdictions, like Australia's, I think it was 2019 Security of Critical Infrastructure Act. You see that a lot of countries are starting to take this very seriously. And seeing the vulnerabilities there, specifically in their critical infrastructure and energy utility networks, and they're taking steps to address those.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So this is probably my favorite part, which is where we get to look at some key lessons learned from past incidents, breaches that have helped shape cybersecurity strategies in the energy sector. And obviously very serious attacks, but I think especially for the audience, these are some of the most interesting parts of these sessions is we look at what's been happening in the real world and what's happened as a result of that. So I'd like to ask all of you really, if you could provide an example that springs to mind of one of these incidents and what's been learned. So maybe we can start with you, Mark.
Well, I think that, my perspective comes through the lens of managing OPSWAT's data diodes and unidirectional gateway products. So, one of the examples that stands out that I've seen, huge impacts from, and it's a bit of an old example, the Saudi Aramco Shamoon virus breach. And it had huge impact in the oil and gas industry. And it really drove, I think the initial reaction was to disconnect OT and IT. But very quickly, I think, the oil and gas sector understood that that's not viable. There's still a need to get that OT data out for, maintenance reviews, business analytics, and so on. They came to the conclusion that the unidirectional data flow is a way to protect those OT boundaries and ensure that, data can get out to the business network, but nothing can get back in. So, really that event was sort of, a wellspring of activity in terms of understanding the value of these unidirectional technologies and how they can be deployed to ensure that data gets out, but there is no return path into the OT network. So that stands out to me as having a significant impact on that vertical and really a trickle down effect to power gen, T&D, water, wastewater, really across the critical infrastructure spectrum.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's now coming full circle because we were just talking about some hardware, which in terms of the unidirectional data flow in one of my previous sessions. So that's great. Thank you, Matt. Any particular example from you that really stands out and the lessons that have been learned from that?
Sure. I mean, it really does. It speaks to the need for scanning all inbound media. There's a number of different examples I could think of. One of the most alarming, was finding actually Triton malware. So for those that aren't familiar, it's designed to target the safety system. So that last line of defense to really keep, the physical safety and well-being of everyone in the facility, okay and safe and secure. It's malware that's designed to target and attack that system. So, to see that in the real world is pretty terrifying. And the fact that somebody picked it up, who knows where, accidentally downloading a movie with the same USB or music, or who knows where it came from. But to find that in the real world and catch that, you have initial conversations, people assume it's a false positive. They go, oh, there's no chance this happens in my facility. And, turns out it actually was the real deal. So to be able to, potentially save what could have been a real world, challenge is a pretty big deal. And it does speak to the need for following all of these compliance frameworks and why all of these things are put in place and, really drilled home as best practices.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremy, you got an example?
Yeah, I'll talk about a couple really quick, but like Stuxnet, still, it's the granddaddy of them all. It's why I have a job, right? It proves that proprietary systems and air gaps are not an all-powerful defense, right? If we look at the Ukraine, we are military and political targets in energy, right? That's a message I drive home every day with people. I always get the, so what, right? Are we really targets? Yes. Colonial, I think, taught everybody about protecting those auxiliary services like metering and billing, because if you can't charge for what you're selling, like, you really end up having to stop, right? You can't run for free forever. And then if we look at like 2022, the year of ransomware, proved that, IT's been in OT for a very long time, and we still have to do things just like Matt and the other one and Mark talked about, right? Really scan your media and stuff as it goes in and protect those data flows in and out. So.
Okay, fantastic. Francesco, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would have highlighted the Colonial pipeline as well. I mean, just simply, the breached employee personal password that was found on the dark web, and how this billing issue ended up having all these real world consequences, including gasoline hoarding and sort of supply crunch in the southeastern U.S. So it just shows also how interconnected the IT and OT systems are, and how you get into one and just you can play havoc with everything else.
Okay, so let's take a little bit more of a positive spin then now and talk about some success stories or case studies that you guys have been involved with. Mark, is there one that springs to mind for you?
I think I just touched on that in terms of, with the enforcing unidirectional data flow out of OT and IIoT environments. We put up a barrier that enables us to get the data out to the business network, but nothing can get back in. So I think companies that have, layered this type of technology along with, scanning technology that Matt has talked about, we not only have to, be concerned with outbound flows, but we need to look at inbound flows, whether that be peripheral media and or, just moving files or remote command and control into OT networks. So I think that, I saw a presentation at S4 last week that sometimes we have to pat on ourselves on the back that, the security measures that we've enacted and the technologies that are out there today are making a positive impact. We tend to only hear about, the negative, but we do have wins out there that we are moving in the right direction in terms of the cybersecurity offerings and defenses that are in place.
I guess one of the problems is companies are not necessarily that open to discussing the details of these things publicly, right? So I'm not expecting anybody to name names, of course, but yeah, does anybody else have any specific examples of really great success stories around this topic?
I think the most recent one, like the recent stories about how several of like the government came and alerted an asset owner, and then the asset owner turned to several of the incident response companies, right? And they all came together to work together, right? So you had, government signal intelligence agencies, the asset owner, the OEM, and the cyber response companies all coming together to basically stop what was going to be a 0-day attack before it really was ever able to be launched and get off the ground, right? And none of us can do this alone. Like, I take my part as an OEM and a large system integrator very, very seriously, but I can't do it by myself, right? I need everybody else to play their part, and I think it's the ultimate win of like and proof of defense in depth, right? Like this is defense in depth on the grand scale when we all play our roles and work together to make stops like that.
So do you think there's a lot more space for more of that type of collaboration then?
I think there is, right? I think we're really starting to form and building it through communities like this event today and some of the other conferences and stuff. I mean, when you hear some of these stories, like that's how these relationships got started. It was just a couple people in a conference talking, right. And then when crap hits the fan, everybody hops onto the phone and we all help each other to win, right?
Okay, yeah, great stuff. Anybody else want to share a particular example?
Yeah, I've got a quick one here. So we've talked more on the grand scheme of some of these large scale attacks and these things that really hit the news, but there's also those tiny wins, right? So I had an operator that I was chatting with, and they told me, hey, for 2 years, I was too nervous to take a vacation. Every time I left, with the family on the beach, I'd get an angry phone call from, the site owner and the operator, and they say, hey, this line went down. We need you to fix it right away. Someone didn't scan their USB. But we were actually able to help them to build a solution where they were able to have the technology enforcement on top of the policy, right? A policy is only as good as when people follow it. But we were able to give them that technical peace of mind. Every USB that was entered the site was scanned. They had a solution in place that was able to do this to truly enforce that policy. And they were able to go take vacations without fear of being bothered by their manager. So that true peace of mind and separation from work to go refresh, it sounds small in the grand scheme, but that is, a major, improvement of quality of life and not having to worry about the site when you're not physically there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the small wins add up to big wins at the end of the day. So this is absolutely also extremely valuable. So in the last section of our discussion, I usually like to do two things. First of which is to get out the crystal ball, look into the future a little bit, but also get practical and talk a little bit about how in this case energy companies should really practically get started. What should they do first if they're looking to kind of renew or improve their approach to all this stuff? So let's start by talking about emerging trends, emerging technologies that are going to potentially influence or perhaps even transform this cybersecurity landscape in relation to ICS and OT. Matt, do you want to continue on that topic?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I can tie the case study in here from before.
Yeah.
We're seeing a huge transition from, looking to check the box with a single point solution to having that truly enforceable security program. But it's also something that, fits seamlessly into the workflow of the operator. You don't want cybersecurity to become a headache for operations. People are always going to take the path of least resistance. So if your security program is causing resistance, they will find a way around it. Whether it was putting glue in USB ports years ago that was picked out with a screwdriver or a pen, people will find a way. So to have that true technologically enforceable program is very important, but also to find something that can help make businesses to actually become more efficient, right? Integrate your solution, have a process, have a workflow. If it makes the teams faster, they'll be happy to use it. I would also say we're seeing a lot of collaboration within organizations, right? It's not a cyber team or an IT team saying, hey, you all have to do this. It's we're considering this solution. What do you think of it? How would this impact positively or negatively your team? What can we do to make this change better for you? And when you do get that buy-in cross-functionally, it really does make it a lot easier to implement these tools, and it's better for the org as a whole.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What about you, Mark? Are there any technologies that you're seeing that are coming along to kind of change the approaches in this space?
Well, I think that Jeremy touched on this, and that the concept of microsegmentation seems to be gaining a lot of traction, and we're seeing, again from my perspective with the diodes and gateways, as well as industrial firewalls, we're seeing these technologies pushed lower into the stack and horizontally also, and what this means is traditionally, these technologies were deployed to protect an OT boundary or a plant. And now we may be putting a lower cost offering in to protect a single PLC and provide that, micro-segmentation between, various aspects of the networks within organizations. So that's an area where I think we're seeing a lot of motion there, a lot of uptake, and I think it will only continue to increase.
Jeremy, you got something to add on the new trends and technologies that are coming along?
Yeah, I mean, don't sleep on the existing stuff. The advantages like multi-engine malware scanning gateways, data diodes, virtualization, SDN, but those still need to be pushed into the environment. We're still not taking full advantage of them. But I'm also not doing my job or my role if I only focus on the last 5 years from IT and how it's not been adopted in OT, right? We're also looking at quantum safe encryption and artificial intelligence. I think the really big benefit we're seeing lately from AI is that AI is really good about identifying AI, right? And so applying AI techniques to go in and look at the new waves of spear phishing is a big component of what we're seeing. And then also using AI to do attack trees and threat modeling exercises. We are overwhelmed with data. We have more data than we could ever process. We have no analysts to process it. So really using AI to go through and do those attack tree analysis. They beat us at CSGO. They beat us at chess because they're very good at that. Let's let the machines do what they do best, right? And let our analysts do what they do. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a recurring theme. We were just talking about it in the last session, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, energy or anything else, retail, doesn't matter. Everybody is drowning in data. Very, very few companies have actually got to the point where they can extract anywhere near the value that's in there. And as you say, the people aren't there to do it. And I think everybody is hoping that AI is that killer app, which is finally going to enable businesses of all kinds to start extracting that value that is definitely in there. Francesco, from your objective research perspective, what are you seeing in terms of trends and technologies?
Yeah, so I'd focus more on the trends and kind of the discussions that I had in my research were really along the lines of the growing understanding of it's not if somebody gets into your systems, but they probably already are, and how do you minimize the damage?
Yeah.
And so, sort of an improving understanding of permissions. Is somebody where they should be? If they are where they should be, are they doing what they should be? Sort of having somebody else to validate what they're doing, that kind of thing. I would say that's what I would highlight.
All right, so I think now is a good time to ask the audience again, because we're now going to move on to priorities, what energy companies should be doing first. So Paul, could you bring up the next poll question, please? Which is that what next action is your biggest priority in terms of cybersecurity? Asset visibility, securing removable media, network segmentation, secure remote access, or endpoint security? It'd be interesting to see what people are prioritizing based on some of the stories that you guys have been telling and examples you've been giving. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what the result of this is going to be. I mean, security as a relative layman, I kind of thought the securing removable media thing was history, but obviously not. Well, actually, you see, the audience agrees with me, and nobody's picked it. So asset visibility is high up there. Endpoint security is that what you're expecting to see, guys?
I'm not surprised from the marketing budgets that are out there, right? Like asset visibility, has some pretty big heavy hitters that are benefit from that monetarily. I think it's important. Like, I think it is a key goal, but I would not sleep on like removable media, right? Like, so many attacks I walk into started with the USB walking through that door.
Really? Okay.
Right. Asset visibility lets you watch your infrastructure burn down, right? Like at great fidelity, right? If you could scan the USB stick, you wouldn't have that problem, right? So
yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough. All right, so let's look at where energy companies should really be focusing their attention first. Then, Mark, what would your response to be that in terms of where they should start?
Well, I think securing OT environments can be a really daunting task for organizations.
Absolutely,
I was at Distributech a few years ago, and a gentleman gave a presentation where they did an inventory of all of their communications into and out of OT. And I was astonished to learn that they counted 238 connections into and out of OT. Some of these were open ports for communications that were no longer utilized. And so, I think they were surprised by the magnitude of the, communication. Some of those were vendors remoting in, and so I think at first it's important to understand what you're up against and understand inventory your connections into and out of. And it's also important to understand, what are your most critical OT assets? And all of them, may not be equal. And for many organizations, the first thing that they look to secure is their Aviva Pi database. It's pretty prevalent in power and oil and gas. So try to hone in on what use case is the most important from a security standpoint and build out from that, secure that, and then build out to other use cases. And, ultimately where we want to get to, again, from a gateway and diode perspective, is we want to have one way out to unidirectionally move data out of OT. We want to have one way in, potentially, secured by a diode with scanning, as Matt had talked about, that looks at software patches, updates, and files coming into OT. And invariably that leaves a subset of use cases that cannot be converted into a one-way push. Maybe they require an application acknowledgement. And there are technologies out there that can secure those communications. One way out is the best. That's what we want to strive for. But the takeaway is to do an inventory, identify what are the most important assets that need to be secured in the OT environment, tackle those first, and then build out to your other communications.
All right, fantastic advice. Thank you. Matt, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think it comes down to having the best understanding of, where are those inputs and outputs for your organization and for those secure networks, whether it's through a diode, USB or other areas. That's all very critical. And then trying to have the best understanding of what those critical assets are, as Jeremy mentioned. Understand what you need to protect, what's the highest risk, what's the most critical, and from there try and build around it.
Fantastic. Jeremy?
Matt basically said it for me, but a solid understanding of what is business critical, right? Like, I still think we get this way wrong so many times, right? We'll focus so hard on one asset and totally forget about that small little thing over there that if that doesn't work, the rest of the whole machine doesn't work either. So.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Francesco, any perspective from you on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just come back to my original point at the start of the panel of, sort of staff hiring enough security professionals. And I think for OT companies, for electric utilities, there's an opportunity here to, address the imbalance in OT cybersecurity people and versus IT cybersecurity people, and sort of train them to on their systems, on the unique challenges of keeping grids running. I think that would be really the first thing.
Okay, thanks. And that's a perfect segue, as it happens, into my final question, which is what advice would you give to a cybersecurity professional that is feeling overwhelmed by all the challenges they're facing in all of this? Who would like to address that?
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Kind of to what the last speaker just said is like, find a community, right? Like, this job can be really isolating at times, right? And there are people who are great at communicating to management about business cases. There are people who are great at knowing all the different policy regulations and frameworks. There are people who are great at discovering all the latest tech, right? Like, none of us have all of those skill sets, right? Like, and so build your community of trust, find a mentor, find some peers who can really take these challenges on with you. If you are honestly doing this by yourself, like, go find some help, right? Like, that's the biggest thing I can say.
Okay.
Right.
Fair enough. Anybody else got some advice they'd like to share for cybersecurity professionals? Matt, Mark?
I think the Jeremy's point on community is huge. I think the more you can do, events, be in person, get to know folks, whether it's different industries, a lot of the best practices, can be applied across critical infrastructure. If you meet someone from a utility, they might have a great piece of advice for someone in oil and gas or refining, right? It's similar problems that we're all dealing with. So joining, whether it's virtual or in person, again, just trying to learn from those different regulations, even if it doesn't apply to your industry, it was still written for a good reason and it's still securing critical assets. It's worth looking into and trying to draw what you can that can help benefit you.
All right.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, I think it's important that organizations develop a culture of cybersecurity, not just with the OT people, but throughout the organization. And we see time and again where someone develops a cybersecurity response plan. It goes into the closet and is not looked at for several years later. So it's important to have that continuous culture of cybersecurity throughout continuously through the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of companies do the same thing with their strategy, the results of their strategy planning workshops. It looks great, it goes in a drawer and gets forgotten about. Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. We've got a few minutes left to go to some audience questions. Just while I organize myself in terms of which ones we're going to ask. Paul, could you put the last poll question up, please? We're going to give the audience members a chance to get some more information if they would like to. So audience, please state your preference in the poll as it stands there. I'm going to now go to some questions. I think this first one will be for Mark, given that it's talking about remote. So for organizations this is from Greg Orloff, for organizations exploring different options for asset connectivity in remote locations, do you have any perspectives on weighing up wired connections, cellular, satellite, from a cybersecurity perspective?
I think it all depends on the nature of the asset and the location of it. We see things all across the spectrum, I don't really have a strong opinion on one, whether you're talking wireless or wired, satellite. There are lots of technologies out there that can help secure those communications. So I don't really have a strong opinion on one versus the other. I don't know, Jeremy, if you have any feeling on that.
No, just know the technology and talk to people who are experts in the different technologies. I think your use cases and your bandwidth are going to drive the technology selection, right? Cybersecurity is a component of it, but there's probably some other more important aspects of that business case, and we're pretty good about securing most things, right? So.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not sure if we've if any of you are that familiar with robotics, but we have a question from Daniel who asks, how do we differentiate in terms of robotics? How do we differentiate what's IoT, what's IIoT, and what are the security standards that apply depending on what the answer to that is? Anybody who can comment on that? No?
I don't know if there is really a difference, sort of if it's a connected asset, sort of the whether it sits there collecting data or whether it uses that connectivity to put stuff together or something like that. I think the issues are really the same.
Okay. Fair enough. Question from Juan Azenjo. More and more AI plays a role with grid data, and ML algorithms running on a public cloud can be compromised and create a disruption. What are the best known practices to deal with this?
There are the normal cloud practices out there, right? I would say, but make sure, like, we're also talking about like the data, right? A lot of the data we're talking about here from operations is like historical operations data, right? A lot of the data we take from our sites to help us with like asset management performance and stuff. That data is not very valuable, right? Like, honestly, like, it just like it's valuable to us because it helps like do predictive maintenance and everything. But if you were to get in there and steal all that data, like, okay, exactly like what a plant was running at 5 minutes ago, but like that's really the energy markets have moved on at that point, right? Like, so you're not going to do energy trading benefits from that, right? Like, so it just kind of, I think when we talk about the cloud and data and we look at like how that's applied to OT and IIoT, like we really have to ask the value of the data and how confidential is that data really, right? Like, what is the confidentiality importance of that data? And a lot of the use cases I deal with, it's not classified, right? It falls out of most regulatory frameworks when I do these. Like, I've had lawyers look at this for me, and they say it just tends to fall out of like the energy information data and all that other stuff. So, because it's historical control system, real-time system data, and it just doesn't have any value long-term.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Jeremy. With some of these IIoT cloud deployments, we do see customer requirements that data has to be encrypted. But I agree with Jeremy that the data really isn't that interesting to somebody on the outside. Having said that, if you've got some malicious activity created by AI, that just reinforces the need to ensure that your OT environment is isolated, and so that even if something is compromised on the IT side, that nothing can get back into that OT environment and cause damage there.
Okay. Going to try and fit another one, possibly two questions in. Alam Ajub asks, when dealing with an environment that includes OT and industrial Internet of Things, which security standard or framework should we focus on? IEC 62443, Industrial Internet Consortium security framework, or both?
I think it depends on what system you're talking. Right? Like there's right. Like, so when we get into like, if it's the core OT system, I'm going to be focused on 62443. If it's my edge systems that are pulling data out of my core OT system, 62443 doesn't have the greatest like technology standards around internet connectivity and everything. And there, I would probably focus much more on the industrial internet security framework. Like, there's a reason there's a couple there. So.
Fair enough. And one very final question, which I just spotted in the chat, if I can find it. As a soon-to-be MS Cybersecurity graduate, what advice can you give towards seeking employment? Because she's finding that most jobs want 3 to 8 years of experience just to start. So, new graduate, how can they get in?
I think home labs are great, right? I think with the virtualization, you can get pretty far with a Raspberry Pi, right, and a breadboard, and go have fun and do some experiences in home lab, right? I think a lot of what we're looking for when we interview is like, have you seen a problem, and how do you approach that problem when you see it, right? That's a lot of our interviewing techniques. Try to find a mentor, and then get any experience you can, even if it's not the job you want, for the rest of your life. Getting your foot in that IT door, go finding that local mom and pop consulting firm, because they do like 20 different things. And so you will get a broad breadth of experience. And those can sometimes be very bad. Some of the smartest people I know started there because they got to see everything. when they did that job. So like, don't limit yourself to that big giant corporate 600,000 a year job, right?
Perfect. All right. Thanks very much, guys. We're out of time. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much for all your contributions. Fantastic insight, amazing knowledge. And also, especially thanks to our sponsor for this session, OpsWatt, of course. Thanks to our attendees for listening. I hope you found it valuable, useful. I hope you've got some good information to take away with you there. That's it for today. If you enjoyed it, please share all your experiences online. Tell your colleagues, and we hope to see you at one of the next IoT World events coming up soon. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day.